Hey there. Are you a US high school student and you're thinking that maybe you want to use your 4 years of undergrad to skip out on the US entirely and maybe, I don't know, study in another country? If so, you have come to the right place. My name is Kristina Simos, owner and founder of Ivy Lounge Test Prep. And for the past 15 years, I have helped high schoolers all around the globe dramatically raise their SAT and ACT test scores and ultimately get into the colleges of their dreams. Today, what we are going to talk about is a continuation of a couple other videos I have done. So we are going to talk US testing requirements if you are a US high schooler applying to European universities. Now, today's edition, we're going to specifically call out 7 universities, 3 in Scotland in the UK and 4 in Ireland. So ready to get started? Because I am. Our first university is the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. And let me point you to the page that I found that tells us everything we need to know. Awesome. So this is the page on the University of Edinburgh's website that specifically talks about the undergraduate entry requirements, specifically for students, high schoolers coming from the USA. That's you, right? So we go here to the standardized testing area. And this is what's interesting is that University of Edinburgh does not necessarily require the SAT or ACT, but it is one of the paths to fulfill your application requirements. So let me show you what I mean. So basically, they want 3 standardized tests. Okay. Now, what that could look like, it could be an ACT specifically with a 27 composite minimum, plus 2 additional AP scores of 4 plus. You could, alternatively, your 3 tests could be the SAT with a score minimum of 1290. And they specifically put here 650 plus in the reading writing. And then we want a 620 plus in math, and then plus 2 APs at a grade of 4 or above. Or if you wanted to forego the SAT or the ACT entirely, then you could do that. You would just need to do 3 APs and get 4s or better, that means 4 or 5 on all 3 of them. So a couple other things to note. The University of Edinburgh does not super score the ACT, but they will, it looks like they will super score, this says the new and old SAT. At this point, it's the new SAT, it's just the SAT, right? It's the new digital one, but it's now been the game in town for a couple of years. So they will super score the SAT, not the ACT. And of course, they say the essays are not required, but that's pretty standard these days. So what is also very interesting is that the University of Edinburgh also acknowledges that not all students maybe have access to taking AP exams. And so they have an alternate possible entry right here. So the next one, so this first one is standardized tests. And then the next one is USA high school transcript for applicants who do not have access to standardized tests. Our entry requirement is still based on SAT, ACT, and AP test scores. However, if your school does not follow an AP curriculum and AP tests are not available to you, then our admissions officer may consider alternative academic evidence. So they're not really saying that the SAT or ACT is optional. They're basically letting you have an alternative path to apply if you don't have access to AP exams and AP classes, okay? So this is what this looks like. So applicants who are unable to take AP exams because the AP curriculum is not available must do the following. And we have a minimum GPA of 3.3 on a 4.0 scale on your transcript. And they have all sorts of other things about specific classes and no grade below a C, junior and senior year. Where we require a specific subject of AP grade 4, then we want a B plus in your honor classes or equivalent. Where we want an AP grade of 5, we want an A in your honor classes or equivalent. So they say right here, so in the majority of cases, we will also request the ACT with a composite score of 27 or above, or the SAT with an overall score of 1290. Again, that's a minimum, with a minimum score of 650 in the reading writing and a minimum of 620 in the maths. But basically, there is a path if you are an IB student that could take the place of APs. But in general, it seems like they're wanting the ACT or the SAT. And then it's just a matter of, can you in fact take two APs to go along with it? Or can you just do three APs and forego the SAT, ACT entirely? Or if you can't do APs, it seems there's an alternative path there. But I'm not really seeing like an alternative path for like no APs and no SAT, ACT, if you know what I mean. So the too long didn't read of that is you basically, if you're a student in the US applying to the University of Edinburgh, you pretty much want to have a minimum composite in a single test sitting on the ACT of a 27 or a super score of a 1290 minimum on the SAT. And it seems that they also want APs, and you would definitely need to go check out the program that you would want to study and if they require a specific AP exam for that. So that is University of Edinburgh. Okay, now let's go to the second school, which is also in Scotland, and that would be the University of Glasgow. So this university goes by those like British A-level grades that like in the British school system you take at the end of high school. And depending on what grade you get, like if it's A star, A or whatnot, that determines kind of like what program you can study at certain like British or, English universities. So this school, Glasgow, also does a similar thing. And now if you're coming from the States, you're not doing British A levels, right? You're doing, SATs and ACTs, APs, maybe you're doing international baccalaureate, but like that's what you have. So in general, and then I'm going to show it to you on the website, but in general, as a US student, your options are for the University of Glasgow, right? You could do a 1280 minimum, right? So 1280 plus on the SAT plus two AP exams. And then depending on what course you would like to study there, that is going to determine like, well, which specific APs do you need to have taken? And do you need fives on them? Do you need fours on them? Does one need to be a five, one a four? So that will be determined by your program of study. So that's one option, 1280 minimum on the SAT and two APs. The next option is, okay, a 27 composite minimum, right, on the ACT, also plus two AP exams. And again, your course of study that you want to study will determine like which specific APs those need to be and what exact score requirements those are going to be. A third path is ditch the SAT and ACT entirely, but then you're going to need three AP exams. And again, the required score on them and which specific ones might be needed are determined by the program you wish to study. So you would have to go to the website and look at that. And they also say something about a required minimum GPA and grades in what they call mandatory classes. So basically, if you have a certain program you want to study, like, I don't know, biomedical engineering, something like that. There might be a few mandatory classes that you needed to have taken and gotten a certain grade on, but that would be different than if you wanted to do like political science or something like that. So again, you would need to contact the program. So I'm going to show you where to look. Okay, so here we are. This is the University of Glasgow website, and this is specifically for international students, and I picked USA. So you can look it up right here. This is the website address for this page. So you're in high school, you're looking at undergraduate. So I pulled this up. And again, what you're going to do is like, do you see this? The equivalent regional qualifications for A-level requirements, right? So again, you would look for at the undergraduate program you want to study. Let's say it's chemistry. And let's say chemistry is like AAA. I'm making this up. You'd have to actually go look, right? So then you're like, okay, cool. It's say, for instance, it's this one, AAA. So for that, it specifically wants a minimum score of 1280 on the SAT plus two APs at 5.5. That means they specifically want you to get fives in two APs, not a 4 and a 5, not a 3 and a 4, right? Or a transcript showing honors advanced AP level courses in your junior or senior years in the mandatory prerequisite subjects. So again, to even know what these are and to know which one of these we even want, we do have to look up the specific Whoops. There we go. The specific undergraduate program you wish to study. But notice something. Every SAT score is minimum 1280. The only thing that really changes are like what grades they want for your AP tests. Okay. Now let's look at the ACT requirement. Again, depending on what the A-level equivalent is for the program you wish to study, the ACT score, they want a 27 plus composite. So that's like the same for all of them, right? Yep, literally the same. The only thing that changes up, they all want two APs with that ACT, is what grades do you need to get? Could it be 2 4s? Could it be a 5 and a 4? Must it be 2 5s? And it does say, or a transcript showing honors advanced, whatever, and a certain GPA in certain mandatory prerequisite subjects. And then this is what we're talking about with these mandatories. So a high school transcript with appropriate GPA and mandatories. So let's say you are wanting to study something that is a AAA A-level equivalency requirement, okay? So then it would say your final high school transcript would need to be a 3.6 with mandatory, so they're required courses you need A's in them. And then the mandatory prerequisite subjects must be studied your junior and senior years and be honors, advanced, AP, college prep, IB level. So if it's just like regular chemistry, that's not going to cut it. If it's honors or advanced or AP chemistry, that would cut it. You would not have an associate's degree. Okay, advanced placement, so AP only entry. So if you chose to forego the SAT and the ACT, then you could just use 3 standardized tests, but they all need to be APs, right? So again, depending on what the A-level equivalency is, that's what tells you what scores you need on these 3 AP exams. But of course, which like actual subjects you need to do these exams in is going to vary based on what program you want to study. So again, you would need to check out, like go here, home, international students, your country, USA, or literally go here and you can find all of this out. But those are the basic requirements, okay? Okay, now let's talk about our third university, and this is the last one from Scotland we're going to talk about, and that is the University of St. Andrews. And every year, I always have so many students who really, really want to apply here. So it is helpful to just know what the requirements are. So I will tell you real quickly, and then I will show you on their website. But basically, if you are currently a high school junior or senior, so you're graduating class 2025 or 2026 from high school, it's basically test optional for you. But if you are currently, say, a sophomore or below your high school graduating class of 2027 and beyond, they have not extended any test policy to you. That said, I'm going to show you their website because the language does make me think they still want to score. Okay. Okay, awesome. So now this is the University of St. Andrews website. And like this is the URL if you in fact want to go visit it. And over here we have the USA entry requirements for undergraduate. And so we go here, and this is the part that is important for our purposes as far as test prep, okay? So it says right here, the SAT and ACT test optional for the application cycles of 2024, 2025. So that would be, if you are a senior or class of 2025 right now, and 2025, 2026. That means if you're a junior or graduating class of 2026, okay? We will not penalize students for the absence of a standardized test score. Most applicants are likely to have taken at least one type of standardized test, AP, SAT, or ACT, but we will consider applicants without testing. If you do submit scores, we look for the following. So ACT, they want a 28 plus, no writing section, right? Writing optional, so no essay. Applicants are welcome to submit all of their ACT test scores, not required, They said, welcome to. We will consider your highest score submitted for each section across multiple test dates. Aha, so they super score, so they encourage you to submit all your scores, but they're looking for a 28 plus composite. For the SAT, they're looking for a 1320 plus total score. And again, essay optional. Depending on where you are in the United States, you might not even have an essay option for your digital SAT. So whatever, no essay, okay? So we will assess the SAT score out of the 1600 and we'll focus on individual subscores in a holistic manner and within the context of the overall application. We will super score both the ACT and SAT. So no essays, they do super scoring. It seems they do want all your scores, but they're not requiring it. So score choice, okay. And we're really looking at ACT of 28 minimum, SAT of 1320 minimum. And then they have, AP, IB, and subject tests are no more. So that's obsolete. So those are used for admissions purposes only, and no credit for advanced entry or exemptions will be awarded. And they tell you the codes to send your SAT or your ACT score. Hot take on St. Andrews. If you are currently a junior or senior, you don't necessarily have to submit a score. If you're a class of 2027 and beyond, this is not test optional for you unless they extend their policies. So be prepared to do that 28 plus composite or that 1320 minimum SAT score. Okay, so now that we finished talking about the 3 Scottish universities that we are going to discuss today, I have a question for you. And that is, if you are a high schooler in the United States, are you considering applying to colleges outside of our 50 states? I want to know. So let me know in the comments below. And while you're at it, just subscribe to my channel. And then that way you will always be the first to know when I drop my weekly video of SAT, ACT, or college application updates. Okay, now let's move to colleges in Ireland, which I've heard is a very fun place to study for your undergrad. So the first one we're going to talk about is Trinity College in Dublin. So the good news is if you are in the class of 2025, i.e. you're graduating this year, you're a senior from high school, then Trinity College in Dublin is test optional for you. But they did not say that they were test optional for anyone else. So if you are a junior, a sophomore, a freshman, beyond, you are going to have to fulfill the testing requirements. So let me show you those. Okay, so this is Trinity College Dublin's website specifically for US students' entry requirements to study for undergraduate. Okay, so you can go up here to the website. So this is where it tells us that if you're a current senior and you're literally graduating in a few months, which I guess that meant you already applied, so this doesn't really help you. If you're watching this video, that it's test optional for you. But if you are a class of 2026 and beyond, not test optional for you. So for most people watching this, they're requiring scores. Note, and this actually applies towards all the ones that we have ever talked about and will talk about in this video and in the other videos. When we have a minimum score, that's just like minimum to apply. That does not mean you are guaranteed entry if you get an SAT or an ACT test score beyond that minimum. Got it? So this is what they want. For the SAT, they want a minimum score of 1250 to 1400 on any 2 of the critical reading, math, and writing sections, and no score less than 500. Okay. And then over here for the ACT, we want a minimum composite score of 27 to 32. So you get to pick, so you have to have graduated, right? You need your US high school diploma. You need one of the tests, SAT or ACT. None of your subjects can be below a 500. And we want a minimum score of, 1250 to 1400. Higher the better, okay? And then, again, it's weird to have minimum and then a range. Oh, well, but let's try and get that minimum to 1400, but as long as you're above 1250, that's probably okay. And obviously they want your high school transcript. We need to have a GPA minimums, right? We need 2 letters of recommendations, academic statement, which is like your personal statement, 500 words stating why you want to study there, and certain courses. So again, you're going to have to check out which specific program or course of study you want to do at Trinity College Dublin, because there might be certain, like, say, math requirements for an engineering major or something along those lines. So you do have to check those out. And so that is basically what you would need to study at Trinity College. So now let's talk about the University College Dublin, which is also in Ireland. Okay, so they have kind of like a funny little system, but I'm going to walk you through it. I'm going to show you the websites. Basically, generally speaking, they have a GPA minimum of 3.2 out of 4 unweighted, right? And they say they also consider the ACT or SAT. And they also consider AP, IB subject exams, and college or university GPA if you have attended some university already. Okay, so this is what's interesting about it, okay, is that it all depends on what course you want to study. I'm sure you're seeing a trend. Depending on what course you want to study, there is a path where you don't send in an SAT or ACT test score, but then the GPA requirement will be higher. And then there is a path where you do send an SAT or ACT test score, and then there's a minimum score for that. And then there's a minimum GPA, but that minimum GPA will be lower than if you only have a GPA and you don't do tests. Does that make sense? To complicate this a little further, some programs of study, you have those like 2 paths. Some you do not, right? Some of them, it's like, no, the only way to get in is you need this GPA and then you need at least the score on the SAT or on the ACT. And some of them might even require a couple AP tests as well in specific subjects and also have specific score minimums. So this is where you're going to figure it out. Okay. So this is the University College of Dublin's website specifically for the undergraduate entry requirements for US high school students, right? Students from the US. So this is where it gets kind of interesting. So these are, again, what I said, the general requirements are what I literally just told you. But in order to figure all of this out, all of this has to do with your specific program of study, right? Standardized tests not required for all of them, but will be considered, but they are required for certain ones. So luckily on this very website, if you scroll, like literally this page, like, look, if you're doing liberal arts and sciences, right, then you have your 2 options. So like if you don't want to do an SAT or an ACT, then that's fine. You need a 3.5 unweighted average out of 4 for your GPA. But if you are doing a standardized test, then you don't have to have a 3.5. You could have a 3 out of 4. And then the minimum in this case would be an 1100 on the SAT and a 22 on the ACT. And it goes through all sorts of things. So notice like we have modern languages, like this one, you have to have like literally a 4.0 GPA. This one, if you do it with a test score, you can have a lower GPA so long as you submit and not too terribly high test score. Okay. So again, a lot of these joint arts, honors, humanities, a lot of these have 2 tracks. These are not very prohibitive test scores, 1,000 on the SAT or 20 on the ACT. Like you should be able to accomplish that real easily. So, okay. But then, and notice all of them, it's like, it's got to be higher on this column if you're not doing a test than this column and you are submitting a test. So now over here, we have, what are these? Dairy business, animal science, agriculture. Okay, cool. So again, 2 tracks for this. One where you submit a pretty easy to accomplish test score, and one where you don't, but then you have to have much better grades. And then over here, architecture. Yeah, there is like a certain way you can do this by applying for the liberal arts and sciences, which means you could do it with or without a test score, but higher test scores for some of these. And then engineering, there is a path over here with a much higher GPA, or 1200 on the SAT, 25 on the ACT, and one AP, score 3 or better. And then additional requirements. Here are all the additional requirements of specifically what math you needed to do, specifically like sciences you needed to have already done. Certain business ones. So notice this one, you could like sneak out the back door, like apply through liberal arts and sciences, or do the one where you just take the SAT or ACT, right? But then look at all of these. You want to do international commerce or economics and finance? There's no option where you don't submit a score, right? You have to. So for those, it's like this is the requirement, 3.5 out of 4 GPA and a 1200 minimum SAT or a 25 minimum ACT and one AP of 3 or better. And then it tells you specific other classes and requirements on the side. So there's a lot of these, like you want to do anything involving law. Oh no, you're going to have to do a test, right? So 1200 on the SAT, 25 ACT seems to be a lot of these minimums, but again, they're kind of different for each program of study. Okay, like econ philosophy. Yeah, sure. If you like have perfect grades, you don't have to send a test score. Or you could be a little more lenient and submit a test score. And then they have, of course, requirements on the other side. So you have to basically read each one. But just looking at this psychology, nope. You want to do psychology, you need a 1400 on the SAT or a 30 on the ACT and 2 AP scores of 3 or better. Okay. Actuarial finance, computer science. Nope. You need a 1400 SAT or a 30 on the ACT, or computer science, a 1200 SAT or a 25 ACT. A lot of these different types of science programs, they want a score. Okay. So again, like all of these biomedical health, medicine, all of these, they want scores. So this one, these are some of the highest we've seen: 1400 SAT, 30 ACT, 31 ACT, 1400 SAT. And then this one has 2 APs, this one has 3 APs. So yeah, a lot of these, physiotherapy, radiology, they want scores. They want scores. Oh, sports and performance, they want scores. So a lot of them, so I haven't really seen scores higher than this. Oh, this one's the highest I've seen so far. Veterinary medicine, 1400 SAT and 32 ACT. So there is a wide range of SAT or ACT minimums, and it totally depends on what you want to study. So again, if you want to apply to University College Dublin, go to the link up here and type it in and figure that out for yourself, because you could be able to get in without a score, but for a lot of programs, you do need the score. So now let's go to our third Irish university, and that is the University of Galway. So the first thing you're going to do with University of Galway is you are going to find your program of study on this one specific website. I'm going to show it to you. When you figure out, like, oh yeah, that's the thing I want to study, you are going to click on it. You're going to click on that specific major, right? And it will literally tell you something called Irish Leaving Cert points. So basically in the Irish high school system, there's a big, culmination of tests, very rigorous. I think it's like 6 or 7 tests you have to take, and you get a certain number of points. And it's like in the hundreds, but it has a big range. And it's kind of like A-levels, the way like England does A-levels, but this is I guess what happens in Ireland. And so there are certain number of points that will be required of you if you are going to study a certain major, okay, at the University of Galway. And those are they call them Irish Leaving Cert or Irish Leaving Certificate points. So neither here nor there. The whole point is you need to know how to find what that number is. And then I'll show you the second webpage where then we convert that into its equivalent in the form of SAT, ACT, or APs. Okay, so here's the first website. Okay, so this right here is going to be the website for University of Galway if you are a U.S. high school student applying for undergrad. And, it's great. There's a little video. So it has all of these like entry requirements. And so what we are going to do, and look at this chart. These are the different categories of Irish Leaving Certificate points, right? And so our job is to figure out which program you want to study, how many points it requires, and then we're going to come back here and we are going to figure out which column it is. And then that is going to tell us what your GPA needs to be, right? And what is the minimum SAT or ACT score that we need, okay? So here we go. This is the undergraduate courses page. So you'd go here, universityofgalway.ie/courses/undergraduate -courses \pound. And then you would find a course. Okay. I'm going to pick, I don't know, what do I want to pick? Let's do psychology. Why not? Okay. So you click on the thing you want to study. There is going to be a video, and literally right here, the next thing, the entry points required, 534. Okay, awesome. So now we know what our requirement is. So we're going to go back to the first website, 534, where that's this one, right? So that's between 500 and 600. So if you wanted to do, like if you wanted, again, to get your Bachelor of Science in Psychology, then you would need your high school diploma to be at least a 3.75 out of 4. And then you would need at least a 1380 out of 1600 on the SAT. And they give some requirements. So the reading, writing needs to be at least 700. The math needs to be at least 670. If you're doing the ACT instead, then we need a composite of 29 at least. So minimum 29. And then they tell you all the codes. And then they say, if available, advanced placement tests, grade 3 or above, and at least 2 tests, preferably 3 tests. So if you are serious about applying, I would be also doing the advanced placements, because when they say if available, like they expect you to try. Okay. But what is required would be whatever the score is here for the SAT or ACT. And again, it totally has to do with this little Irish Leaving Certificate points that's required for that program of study, and just whichever column it is. So those are the requirements for the University of Galway. And finally, our last of the universities we're talking about today is the University of Limerick, also in Ireland. The long and short of it is that the university does in fact require an SAT or an ACT test score, but the score minimums, just like all the other schools, it depends on the specific program you want to study. So let me show you the 2 places you are going to find this. Okay, so this right here, ul.ie/courses/USA. So this is going to be the US high school student requirement page to study at the University of Limerick for undergrad. So if we scroll down, right, oh, look, they have a USA entry requirement. So let me just read this for you. Entry requirements for applicants. The University of Limerick does require SAT or ACT along with a US high school diploma. The scores required vary depending on the program you choose to study. Okay, awesome. And then now we're going to click this USA entry requirement, and they made a handy dandy PDF that's literally organized into 2 pages. This second page, this is what you want to look at. So we've got like kind of, they call them bands, right? But they're really like different tiers of study. So let's say you're band 1, you want to do like the performing arts. Well, you're going to audition, but this is going to be a GPA of 3.0 and an SAT minimum of 1090, an ACT minimum of 22. Okay. And then we have like all of these things. So BA in law and accounting, business, European studies. I'm not going to look at all of them, but like computer science, right? So that is going to be band 2. That's going to be an SAT minimum of 1190 or an ACT minimum of 24, and also a GPA minimum of 3.0. Now, say you want to do journalism or aeronautical engineering, or there's some more engineerings or math. Food and science, health, physics, more math, tech management. Okay, well, that's going to be slightly higher. We're going to have a GPA of 33 minimum, and then we're going to have an SAT of 1250 or an ACT of 25 minimum. Okay, And then finally, a few of them are even higher than that. So those would be these band 4 ones. And that's if you want a Bachelor of Arts in International Business, in psychology and sociology, or in physiotherapy. So for that, we would need a GPA of 3.3 minimum. We would need an SAT of 1350 minimum or an ACT of 28 minimum. And this also says, oh, there's even more fine print. So 600 minimum in both maths and English. Got it for the SAT. And then it says one AP subject with a grade of 3 or better. Okay. Oh, and sorry, we're going back to band 3 for a second. So this says 600 minimum in either maths or English. So this is 600 minimum in math or English. This one is 600 minimum in both math and English. So in other words, math and reading, writing. So you literally look here. It tells you everything you need to know. So those are the testing requirements for 7 really awesome European universities where you can speak English and apply if you are a US high school student, specifically if wanting to study in Scotland or Ireland. So if you found that helpful, I have some other videos on this too. I have one about Canadian universities and I have one about British universities. So check those out in the links below.